Hi again, we are back. And what today? What today? We are about to start the first panel discussion for today, which is going to be an amazing one with some world famous speakers, with famous games, famous products. And guys, we are connecting to you. Can you hear me?
Good morning.
Good morning. What's up? How are you?
We're good.
All right, so we are live and we are just about to start the panel, and I'm yielding the stage to John. John, you may start the intros now and the panel itself. Good luck.
Great, thank you. Well, great to be joining this morning. We've got a fantastic panel where we're going to be diving into conversations around brand versus performance, a bit of IPs. But before we start, I'm going to hand over to the panelists to quickly introduce themselves. Over to you guys.
Hi, I'm Zoran. I'm working as a country lead and marketing director for Seriously Digital Entertainment, mainly known for the Best Fiends brand. Best Fiends and Best Fiends Stars currently among those top 10 sellers on casual games. And I'm here to talk about a little bit what brand and performance marketing have to do with each other.
Who's next?
Philip.
Okay, my name is Philip Weisberg. I'm the CEO of Whow Games, which probably compared to some of the other panelists might not have heard so much, but we are the leading social casino in Europe. So our major platform, our major brand is called Jackpot. And prior to that, we were part of the scaling experience of BigPoint back in the browser days. So my input will be mainly about how we cooperate with brands and how we could use and utilize them in a little bit of a different aspect compared to the more casual approach.
Thanks, Philip. David?
Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is safe at home and healthy. I'm David. I'm the head of Candy Crush Friend Saga in King's London studio. So I will hopefully contribute to give some perspective from Game Studio on what brands can be leveraged around gaming.
Okay, thanks, guys. Let's start with a simple one. What do the words brand and performance mean to you within your organizations? And do you think brand and performance marketing go hand in hand, or are they separate teams? Who wants to start?
I can take that one if you want to. Basically, brand and performance are not exclusive to each other. They're actually, in our opinion, two sides of the same coin, and they definitely impact each other, specifically if you're in a more mature market, which the casual game market now is. And we can definitely see some effects from brand awareness and brand-driven, mass media-driven campaigns on our user acquisition KPIs and vice versa. So brand and performance do definitely, for us at least, go hand in hand.
Great.
I can follow up on this. So I think that, as Zora mentioned, creating brand awareness is really important for some of our games and progress to enable discovery and to make sure that actually our players can find us later. However, I mean, we're in a digital world where performance is really important, and to drive specific actions after showing an ad is really driven some of the activities that we are running in our games. However, as Sora mentioned, this needs to be hand in hand, and I feel there is a kind of practice at the moment that is kind of quite trendy, what we are not following, which is around these famous fake ads, where maybe brand and product are not really aligning here. So as an example here, that's something that from Kim perspective we are not doing and we are not willing to support. But as far as I know, there is some kind of companies trying to leverage that opportunity as well.
Okay, there's a word that's come up a couple of times, and kind of before the panel we were talking a lot about TV, and I find it really interesting that your organizations are investing heavily in TV, which traditionally is this classic brand channel. So can you talk a little bit about why you're investing TV and the impact that has on downloads, and how on earth you attribute that?
Yeah, surely. Obviously, yes, TV is part of our multi-channel approach in terms of media, and as the main driver in terms of mass media, excuse me. But the way we measure it is basically a mixture of attribution through timed attribution, basically a certain time after a certain TV's creative will run, we will attribute that install then to that TV creative or the TV spot that we ran. But obviously, you can already see that the customer journey is not just one click away, but it's a journey, as the name says. So we have to find a mixture of how do we attribute installs that also were created through mass media, but later on attributed to user acquisition journey. And that is the complicated part, and we're still figuring it out, but we already have a quite good idea and have some mathematical, actually, attribution models that we then where we attribute certain installs to the TV campaign, as well as an in-game survey, which seems a little bit old school, but is actually a quite useful tool to just ask, where have you heard of us? And that together then gives us a picture of how much of the installs and how much of the new entrance into the IP and the business have come through the means of TV or mass media. Same, by the way, goes for other channels, as we're also obviously working on a multi-channel campaign. We have multi-channel campaigns, so it's not only TV and not just user acquisition, but all kinds of different ways of doing this. It's like podcasts, obviously. We're also working with content creators and all these kinds of things. We also actually tried out radio quite successfully, to be honest.
Wow, it sounds
I really like. Sorry.
No, go for it, Philip.
I really like what you said about the old service and the radio, because that's something us as a more pointed, targeted group, but that's something that we've done as well, and we've seen quite some interesting spikes in user acquisition here. For us, talking about TV and things like that, it's part of the overall number of touch points, because we know a user takes 6 to 8 touch points before registering on average. So for us, it's part of the overall strategy to be out there in the partly mass media, but especially for some of the bigger TV stations, so that the users know that we are there, and we can attribute it via, for example, when there's a flight online or anything like that, we know, for example, that our organics will go up and things like that. So that's a little bit of a thing to attribute. I think it's for the overall industry to do so, but we do see benefit there that it's something we don't want to miss out in general.
David, what about
both of please, John, take this one. Yeah.
Sorry, David, from a Candy Crush perspective, obviously big investors in TV. I feel like I see your ads a lot. How's that working for you?
So I think, as Soran and Philip mentioned already, it's quite hard to measure traditional media investments or in mass market, and the attribution models that we have are not as accurate as digital properties. However, for our broader properties as Candy Crush, I think they offer really broad audiences that we can reach through this media, and is key to engage in some markets for us through particularly TV advertising to acquire, retain, or re-engage with some of our user base. So in our case, they derive substantial value to King, even though, as our panelists mentioned before, it's quite hard to attribute that, mostly down through some kind of organic uplifts and some other media that we are doing in our own attribution models.
It's fascinating. It's always been the biggest challenge, right? How you attribute offline media, and specifically when we live and die by kind of ROAS, ARPU.
Well, the funny thing here is, and as David mentioned, it's hard to attribute it to new entrants, but it also has a definite effect on existing users and retention, and actually also plays a big role in not only in these cases, but also in terms of win back, basically lapsed users that we can win back. And the thing that we already seen is not could we only significantly and quickly raise new installs, but we were also actually able to raise the ARPU, to be honest, which is actually I think in the long term a more interesting KPI to look at if that has, because that has impact on the overall business and the bottom line in the end.
Yeah, agreed. I think that we run in late May and early June a campaign which was called the Candy Crush is Real, and it was across multiple media, multiple touch points, as you can imagine, and TV was an important part for that. And actually, for games like ours, which is part of popular culture now, I believe that is an opportunity for us to reconnect with some players that have already experienced our game before, and actually maybe they are not in top of mind now, but understanding what the kind of experience they were having in the game maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, already remind them about us, and that could drive substantial re-engagement after being exposed to this particular activity.
So let's change the conversation a little bit. So obviously we're talking about using mass media to drive installs. What sort of successful opportunities or ways do you see for brands to integrate themselves into video games, mobile games?
Well, from our side, I think it's a little bit of a different aspect because we don't have a casual product out there. So for us, it's basically a social casino, but us as the people who started it all come from the gaming space. So our expertise does not lie in building social casino slots. So for us, it was actually the idea of using a lot of brands, but building a platform where we can combine the best brands that are out there. So our view on brands is, for example, getting the best content in from trusted brands. So this could be the publishers of some very proven slots on one side, but taking original IP, like Who's Going to Be the Millionaire, making a slot out of that and combining that in our platform in general, and then even using brands to distribute our product. So that's how we see it. For example, if you take influencers, so the biggest casino influencer in the world actually is our influencer, and we regard him as a brand. And we even go one step further, since we have a product that we could, we could put any name on and any appearance. We have actually partnered with the biggest brands in our space and provide them a product, which is our white label B2B approach. But we really see upkeep in the users and everything there, that us being the master of platform and the master of partnerships for brands, of combining all of that together. So it's a little bit of different approach, but it's really successful for us to utilize on that.
Maybe looking into an advertising angle here, I think that one of the benefits that games may have for brands and IPs, speaking, is around reach and audience. I presume that brand awareness across multiple demographics, platforms, games or experiences is quite relevant for them to engage with. As an example here at King, we have almost a 250 million MAU, so our reach is kind of quite big, speaking. And I think that some properties or some experiences have like unique audiences, like esports as an example here, really young compared to traditional sports. And there are some brands that are getting, let's say, challenged to reach younger audiences, and esports could be a completely different avenue to them. Also, when thinking on performance, I think most of our games are digital games, so the point for us to reach a specific targeting audiences is really relevant as well, and they can offer multiple business models to reach them and to actually drive some of the specific actions for the campaigns that brands would like to run.
Yeah, and as you guys said, licensing as well as using other brands to extend your reach. For us, a brand, and that's for those of us who know our brand Best Fiends, we heavily believe in the brand also needs to live outside the game. So that's the reason why we create that many content, like our animations, but we also try to branch out into people's lives, basically not only increasing our reach into different demographics, but also making it part of their everyday life. So we're definitely looking into how to expand that brand with other brands and see how we can turn Best Fiends in this case into much more than just a video game brand. I mean, look at the guys from Rovio. They're I think the perfect example on how to actually extend a brand into all or most categories and truly establishing an IP beyond just the video game realm. And I think that also allowed them to grow to the extent that they're at now, and actually add also real value to the brand in the end.
I would like to add here, and particularly on brand integrations, I feel that they need to be quite respectful to player experience and also their expectations. So I think there should be a kind of audience fit between what the brand that you're bringing to the game and the actual audience of the game. So if this combination is actually powerful, then you can have a multiplier effect rather than having that 1+1. Maybe in this case, 1+1 is not 2, is maybe 3 or 5. So you need to consider what are the audience that you have in your game to actually propose an IP or a brand that can actually make an impact on them, and then the proper brand integration would be specific to the kind of activity that you would like to run.
So there's a couple of great things that have come up in that conversation. Let's start with the first one. So we're talking about this, huge audience. David, you've spoken about, the huge, audience that you have. So where do you see the kind of biggest growth opportunities are going to be for brands in the gaming space? Where should we be looking? Is it, we've heard esports, hyper casual games are like $4 or $5 billion industry. Where should you be looking?
I think that at the moment still is quite, I would say, early days for in-game advertising compared to all the traditional media. So I think there's a great opportunity to test and to do effective marketing campaigns across the gaming experiences that we proposed. If we look into future, I think definitely AR could offer a great, advertising experience, and VR as well. So that will be maybe more immersive and more kind of tailored experiences we can bring there. If we think about reality and things that we can offer now, I presume mobile gaming is still, a really effective way to reach any particular consumer out there. So quite effective targeting, a good approach for, trying to bring some action after that advertising engagement. If we think of brand perspective as well, as you mentioned before, reach is really relevant. I think that, companies like us and, Robbie was mentioned before, but many others also across, AAA as well are reaching hundreds of millions of people every month. So that's an audience that should not be underestimated. And they are also wanting to experience some of the advertising opportunities in a more integrated and more meaningful way to them as well as part of the game.
Okay, great. Zoran, you mentioned licensing, and I know you've got a lot of experience in this space. So, there are some brands who don't have the kind of gaming and development expertise that some of your teams have. So could you share your views on the kind of benefits of really licensing your brand and working with a mobile game studio?
Well, the licensing obviously experience stems from another a part of my professional life, but obviously working with PlayStation and Call of Duty and the brands that I worked with in Destiny, I can say definitely licensing is a powerful tool because it allows you to be a kind of brand platform. Expanding and helping you to expand your brand into the there's a German word for it, Erlebniswelt, of basically the experiential world of customers. And again, making for fans to be able to engage with a brand on multiple levels, not only, again, expands your reach, but actually also deepens the retention, deepens the connection with the brand, and actually in a way protects your brand from attacks of other Me Too products in a way. Because let's be honest, going back to hyper casual games, in terms of gameplay, there's a lot of, let's say, match 3 or other casual games that do basically the same in terms of gameplay. What makes the difference is the brand. What makes the difference is events, is the content and how people engage with it. And licensing it out actually just deepens that relationship with your brand. Plus, obviously, it can also increase your bottom line if that's something that you want to do through licensing. But again, for the brand partner, on the other hand, it also gives the possibility to sort of transfer some of that brand image to their product, basically adding leverage to their communication, adding the content that you created and basically have loaded with some sort of sentiment. It actually enables them to have that benefit of that sentiment being transferred to their products. So in a way, brand licensing is also a way of platforming for the brand, enabling it to branch out even further into the customer experience.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I cannot agree anymore on what you mentioned here. And I think that something that you already mentioned on seriously is applicable to King in the sense that Candy Crush is a brand already. So, I mean, it's an IP that is kind of part of the pop culture, as I mentioned before. So when you think about a brand relevance, particularly in an entertainment industry where we are part of, where there is competition not just from other games, but also music, cinema and series and so forth, it's important to understand that you are offering an experience which is relevant for your players in this case, and they can have a long-term engagement with the actual property, and they can build this trust and this relationship with your product in a way that they benefit from the relationship. And as Soran was mentioning here, if you think that there are other IPs, other brands that can enhance that experience, that can overlap with your audience, I think that's a perfect mix.
What I like about your answers is that you're both starting with the content, the users, and the experience. And I think sometimes that's the challenge, right, with like IP licensing, is some of these brands, they just see it as like a revenue extension, right, digital revenue, versus, you know, where you're starting, which is actually being about your audience. So I've heard the word popular culture 2 or 3 times in your answers. So a kind of a different angle to this mass media conversation is, can you share anything about maybe where your teams, your designers, developers, like what inspiration they draw from popular culture to kind of influence games, mechanics, even monetization?
Sure, I can take it, or if anyone else wants to do it, I'll take it. Oh.
Go ahead.
Go. Okay. So yeah, of course I mean, with the amount of content, I mean, we got monthly updates for 2 games now, with basically where we're remodeling the whole game. Plus we have a plethora of a big amount of owned and operated channels that we need to fill on a daily basis, and then engage with our customers. So definitely we need to take some cues from popular culture. Maybe that could be anything, like current events, from things like simple things like Father's Day, obviously, to actual real pop cultural events. We also, for instance, charity. We're big believers and supporters of charities and movements such as the Pride Month, or we're also engaging with One Special Day from the UK, for instance, or we're also working on Malaria No More, the big initiative against the malaria in the world. So those are the cues that we're taking. But obviously, it's also smaller things, like when it comes down to our character designs, we're also taking cues from current events. For instance, we just had a space themed character style that we also put into a storyline, where we also obviously we have taken cues from the current developments in space travel that have basically are back on the table. So yes, we're definitely taking cues from popular culture and how it's developing, but it's more of a say organic process, rather than something you can plan months or years ahead. So I'm extremely grateful for the very creative people that work in Helsinki and create these amazing content that is, and you know, are over 100 million hours viewed on YouTube, which kind of seem to matter on to our customer base.
So from our side, I think it's quite interesting to see that, and I really like what you just said, how you take the Father's Day and all of these things. So you especially have a very wide audience. So for us, it's very important to look at our audience, which is not as wide and big as more from the casual side. So for us, it's really important to understand what could work with our audience. And I would like to extend that, not just of integrating brands into our platform, so to provide additional trust and things like that, but for every update that we do, when we do, for example, new events, new features, and we theme it, we could easily couple it with brands, or if we just theme it, we have to consider, okay, what is our target group? So for our target group, for example, everything that's like the movies from the 80s and 90s, and that was really big back then. So we've even built updates and events that resemble, for example, with a Pac-Man brand and things like that, because that is something that the people that are playing our games, and the audience is not the 15, 16-year-old, because we don't target teenagers, we target more the 40, 50-year-old players there. For them, it's very important for them to feel at home and to provide an experience that's generally there. So I would, from my side, say that we're extending the overall production and not just the brand sourcing to the really pinned down target audience area there.
Coming back to something that Sora mentioned before as well, our approach to content is really important. So we are releasing content twice a week, and then we do a kind of full app revamp every 2 weeks. And for us, it's quite important to introduce relevancy to our players and to introduce, seasonal content content that is in context with their own experiences. So coming back to your question, John, we have internal marketing teams that look into both marketing insights and player insights, and they can inform us about trends. But also, as Philip was mentioning here, we have also adult audience in our games, so we also need to understand which are the interesting facts where we can bring this nostalgia and sentiment to our players, where they were having some good memories of movies, events, games they used to play, and bring this back from their memories as well.
That's fantastic. And I think, as well as the creative brains, I think it's important not to underestimate the technology behind the scenes making this happen, all the kind of live ops, BI, A/B testing as well. So we've got about 5 minutes left. So we touched on it earlier, but do you, from a monetization perspective, and I know, it really varies by game genre, but what kind of additional value do you see from, brands advertising your games from a, eCPM perspective, or, other types of ad formats or partnerships, versus, ads from other gaming companies?
Well, if it's retargeting, it really helps driving down the cost of acquisition. So that is something, and the main reason for that is that we see it's the trust factor. So for us, we even I mentioned earlier Who's Going to Be a Millionaire. They have a millionaire brand, and we build a slot together with Sony and things like that. And we even put up posters in the dentist's waiting rooms there. So usually you wouldn't find a social casino in these areas to say so, but and people would usually not consider themselves playing social casino slots, but it really worked there. So for us, it's something like a door opener to think a little bit outside the box and work there. And we see a really good upkeep there, that if you think like that and you could combine your great product with a brand like that, it could just help in terms of trust factor, driving the users onto your portal.
You've just given me this vision, Philip, of being at the dentist and looking up at the screen and being able to play this social casino game while I'm getting my teeth cleaned. I love it.
I love the marketing department.
Yeah, it's great. Any other perspectives on like the impact of brands from monetization?
I can maybe take a broader approach here, and I think there are a couple of points we touched before. So brand partnerships or IP, generally speaking, can help in discovery. Also, in this competitive world that we mentioned before in entertainment, can help as well if you are able to build a brand to retain your players and improve the opportunities for you to engage and reconnect with your player base. But also, I think they can propose specific monetization opportunities by creating new products in your games. So that's not something that we are doing specifically in King, but there are many examples out there. Like Fortnite is an example where they are leveraging third-party IP to propose in-game products that can be monetized. So I definitely believe that if there is a kind of opportunity to connect with players with the brand that you are including in your game, there are monetization opportunities that can come through product as well.
Definitely, but coming back to your argument, David, that there definitely needs to be a brand consumer fit with your product. If there is no fit and you just introduce a brand into your brand universe, just for the sake of monetization and bottom line thinking, then you can actually hurt your brand. So I think there's a very thin line between brand fit and monetization, and how you make it feel natural and just organic to the consumer. If you can achieve that kind of brand fit with a different brand, then congratulations, you got the perfect brand fit. And I think, as to your point, David, as well, Fortnite is a very good example, but Fortnite has also positioned itself very, let's say, open to any brand anyway, because they're just as a brand, they're hard to fit into a certain box. So I think that was actually an interesting move from Epic to get it to make this brand so open and easy accessible for other brands.
Yeah, I agree on that. So I think this is something we touched before, in the sense that any kind of brand partnership could need to have an audience fit with your actual player base, and they need to add value. So that was something that was kind of considered as a kind of hypothesis in this example I placed before. So I agree on that. I presume, as you mentioned, Fortnite is quite broad as a potential avenue for partnerships, but it's true as well that if you look into some of the brands they introduced in the property recently, they are quite tailored to music and of cinema, and that's really interesting for younger audiences as well. And in most of the cases, we're kind of linked together with some specific things going in the real world, like a new movie release or whatever it is, what was going on. So acknowledging that they maybe are more wise than other maybe brand in terms of fit. I think that, as mentioned before, this audience fit is really important to leverage this brand marketing opportunity or brand partnership opportunity.
Well, great, David, Zora, and Philip. I think we are absolutely spot on time. Thank you for all of your great insights and contributions. I don't know if we've got any questions or if we're out of time.
Well, yeah, thank you for rounding up. This was a great discussion. And yep, we have a question. We just have time for this one. And if you mind, I will ask the one. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah. So the question is from Sean Gotkin, and he thanks you for the really interesting panel discussion. And the question is, what are your thoughts on whether to prioritize between brand recall and brand recognition when using more mass media related channels?
That's a good question. Well, basically, media recall, brand recognition could be subsidized for us, at least, also under the brand awareness umbrella. And so we could definitely see the impact of brand awareness driving KPIs like CPI down, enabling us to actually make better CPM deals on mass media, and overall helped us, again, as I mentioned before, drive our ARPU up, which was an interesting insight that we didn't expect in that regard. So yes, brand recognition, recall, awareness, that definitely have measurable effects on our KPIs.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone else want to contribute to answering?
I think here, as Zora mentioned, there is a difficult part, which is attribution model. But with infer data we have from our internal sources, we can understand there is an impact on decreasing the CPIs for active campaigns. We are able to expand our retention with this brand recognition, and also, I mean, for reactivation purposes, it's really helping out. So it has a proper impact on RPI or output, generally speaking. So I cannot agree anymore.
We actually see, because since we have a B2B solution for our product, and if we take a stronger or a less stronger brand on a quite similar product, we see we're actually able to compare it on a direct basis per market. So I completely comply and completely agree to what you guys said, David and Zoran. We see the value and the benefit of brands there, comparing it to the lesser and the stronger brands. We really could see it on our eCPI and everything that's related to it, the organics, the retention, and it all comes down to the trust factor, because people know what they're buying into.
Okay, thank you, guys. This was good, and I believe we have to round up. Thank you very much for joining us on Hamburg Mobile Summit Live. This was a great discussion, and goodbye. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, bye-bye.